and make preparations. The next to start upon the trail. Come to sit on the waggon with me and tell me what guns and ammunition you have got, for according to Hans those savages don't seem to have touched anything except a few blankets and a herd of goats." He did as I asked, telling me all he could remember. Then he said, "It is a strange thing, but now I recall that about 2 years ago a great savage with a high nose, who talked a sort of Arabic, which, like Inez I understand, having lived on the coast, turned up one day and said he wanted to trade. I asked him what in, and he answered that he would like to buy some children. I told him that I was not a slave dealer. Then he looked at Inez, who was moving about, and said that he would like to buy her to be a wife for his chief, and offered some fabulous sum in ivory and in gold, which he said should be paid before she was taken away. I snatched his big spear from his hand, broke it over his head and gave him the best hiding with its shaft that he had ever heard of. Then I kicked him off the place. He limped away, but when he was out of reach, turned and called out that one day he would come again with others and take her, meaning Inez, without leaving the price in ivory and gold. I ran for my gun, but when I got back he had gone and I never thought of the matter again from that day to this." "Well, he kept his promise," I said, but Robertson made no answer, for by this time that thundering dose of bromide and laudanum had taken effect upon him and he had fallen asleep, of which I was glad, for I thought that this sleep would save his sanity, as I believe it did for a while. We reached Strathmuir towards sunset, too late to think of attempting the pursuit that day. Indeed, during our trek I had thought the matter out carefully and come to the conclusion that to try to do so would be useless. We must rest and make preparations. Also there was no hope of our overtaking these brutes who already had a clear 12 hours start by a sudden spurt. They must be run down patiently by following their spoor, if indeed they could be run down at all, before they vanished into the vast recesses of unknown Africa. The most we could do this night was to get ready. Captain Robertson was still sleeping when we passed the village, and of this I was heartily glad, since the remains of a cannibal feast are not pleasant to behold, especially when they are. Indeed, of these I determined to be rid at once. So slipping off the waggon with Hans and some of the farm boys, for none of the Zulus would defile themselves by touching such human remnants, I made up 2 of the smouldering fires, the light of which the voorlooper had seen upon the sky, and on to them cast, or caused to be cast, those poor fragments. Also I told the farm natives to dig a big grave and in it to place the other bodies, and generally to remove the traces of murder. Then I went on to the house, and not too soon. Seeing the waggons arrive and having made sure that the Amahagger were gone, Thomaso and the other cowards emerged from their hiding places and returned. Unfortunately for the former, the first person he met was Umslopogaas, who began to revile the fat half-breed in no measured terms, calling him dog, coward and other opprobrious names, such as deserter of women and children, and so forth, all of which someone translated. Thomaso, an insolent person, tried to swagger the matter out, saying that he had gone to get assistance. Infuriated at this lie, Umslopogaas leapt upon him with a roar, and though he was a strong man, dealt with him as a lion does with a buck. Lifting him from his feet, he hurled him to the ground. Then, as he strove to rise and run, caught him again and, as it seemed to me, was about to break his back across his knee. Just at this juncture I arrived. "Let the man go," I shouted to him. "Is there not enough death here already?" "Yes," answered Umslopogaas, "I think there is. Best that this jackal should live to eat his own shame," and he cast Thomaso to the ground where he lay groaning. Robertson, who was still asleep in the waggon, woke up at the noise and descended from it looking dazed. I got him to the house and in doing so made my way past, or rather between the bodies of the two Zulus and of the 6 men whom they had killed, also of him whom Inez had shot. Those Zulus had made a splendid fight, for they were covered with wounds, all of them in front, as I found upon examination. Having made Robertson lie down upon his bed, I took a good look at the slain Amahagger. They were magnificent men, all of them, tall, spare and shapely, with very clear cut features and rather frizzled hair. From these characteristics, as well as the lightness of their colour, I concluded that they were of a Semitic or Arab type, and that the admixture of their blood with that of the Bantus was but slight, if indeed there were any at all. Their spears, of which one had been cut through by a blow of a Zulu's axe, were long and broad, not unlike those used by the Masai, but of finer workmanship. By this time the sun was setting, and thoroughly tired by all that I had gone through, I went into the house to get something to eat, having told Hans to find food and prepare a meal. As I sat down, Robertson joined me, and I made him also eat. His first impulse was to go to the cupboard and fetch the spirit bottle. Indeed, he rose to do so. "Hans is making coffee," I said warningly. "Thank you," he answered. "I forgot. Force of habit, you know." Here I may state that never from that moment did I see him touch another drop of liquor, not even when I drank my modest tot in front of him. His triumph over temptation was splendid and complete, especially as the absence of his accustomed potations made him ill for some time and of course depressed his spirits, with painful results that were apparent in due course. In fact the man became totally changed. He grew gloomy but resourceful, also full of patience. Only one idea obsessed him, to rescue his daughter and avenge the murder of his people. Indeed, except his sins, he thought of and found interest in nothing else. Moreover, his iron constitution cast off all the effects of his past debauchery and he grew so strong that although I was pretty tough in those days, he could out tire me. To return, I engaged him in conversation and with his help made a list of what we should require on our vendetta journey, all of which served to occupy his mind. Then I sent him to bed, saying that I would call him before dawn, having first put a little more bromide into his 3rd cup of coffee. After this I turned in and notwithstanding the sight of those remains of the cannibal feast and the knowledge of the dead men who lie outside my window, I slept like a top. Indeed, it was the captain who awakened me, not I the captain, saying that daylight was on the break and we had better be stirring. So we went down to the store, where I was thankful to find that everything had been tidied up in accordance with my directions. On our way Robertson asked me what had become of the remains, whereon I pointed to the smouldering ashes of one of the great fires. He went to it and kneeling down said a prayer in broad Scotch, doubtless one that he had learnt at his mother's knee. Then he took some of the ashes from the edge of the pyre, for such it was, and threw them into the glowing embers where, as he knew, lay all that was left of those who had sprung from him. Also he tossed others of them into the air, though what he meant by this I did not understand, and never asked. Probably it was some rite indicative of expiation or of revenge, or both, which he had learnt from the savages among whom he had lived so long. After this we went into the store and with the help of some of the natives or half-breeds who had accompanied us on the sea cow expedition, selected all the goods we wanted, which we sent to the house. As we returned thither I saw Umslopogaas and his men engaged with the usual Zulu ceremonies in burying their 2 companions in a hole they had made in the hillside. I noted, however, that they did not inter their war axes or their throwing spears with them as usual, probably because they thought that these might be needed. In